name's Tiago Forte. I'm the founder of Forte Labs. And just in case you're wondering where you are, welcome everyone. This is a conversation and interview and demo with Kent Sisco. Kent reached out to me. He's the creator of a flexible workspace for ideas, writing tool, visual knowledge library. It sounds like it can be described different ways, but I was intrigued, really loved the website, loved some of the language and the ideas and the framing. And I just love connecting with creators of tools because I'm not a tool creator, I'm a content creator. So I depend on people who actually know how to make these things. Otherwise, I would just have a bunch of crazy theories. And just get their background, introduce them to my audience, record the conversation, put it on my blog and on YouTube. And welcome, Kent. I'm super excited to speak with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've known about you for a while, and a couple of our users introduced me to you, and diving into it a little bit deeper into the building a second brain, getting to know kind of you. And then also just want to mention that I watched that documentary that you did with your father. And it was so fun to watch him talk about the family heritage and faith. And that is so cool. It was really a rich, great look at Tiago Forte's background. That was really cool.
Yeah, that documentary was a product of my information management tools, because I don't know how I would have managed that whole process alongside my normal work without digital notes. So that's right. One reason that I've promoted that film to my audience.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I like it.
Thanks for checking that out. And to everyone on the call, be present in the chat. I encourage you to pop in comments, questions, links, clarifications. Kent, you might want to have the chat closed because it can be incredibly distracting. So okay. Feel free, if that's the case, to leave it closed. I'll kind of be jumping in there here and there to pull out any questions for you. Okay. We will record this conversation and share it afterwards, like I said. So if you need to hop off early, no worries. And I'd love to just actually hear really quick. I always like to know where people are from. So can we just test out the chat feature by, if everyone could enter into the chat which city or country they're calling in from, so we can get a sense. Cool. Florida, Texas, Israel, Hawaii, San Francisco, Lima. Incredible thing about Zoom, we're all just kind of in the same virtual space. LAX and NYC, very cool. Okay, so super diverse crowd. Okay, so chat is working. Kent, I'd love if you, so before actually talking about Speare, I would like to really start by talking about you and your background, because these kinds of tools, I often find people have such a kind of personal and profound journey to get to the point where they decided this is what they want to do, is to build a knowledge management tool. And also, of course, practically, that background totally influences the way that is created. So could you kind of tell us in a few minutes, like, I don't know, what is your background, where are you from, and what led you to the PKM world?
Yeah, I was raised as a missionary kid in Japan. So I was homeschooled, went to Japanese school in the afternoons. And so I had to kind of spoon feed myself, if you will, which kind of got me into the notion of being able to take notes on my own, read documentation, highlight the things that I needed to know for the tests and stuff like that. When I returned to the United States from Japan, that was when I was about 21 years old. I started going to university, and that was the first time that I actually ever saw a computer, a personal computer. I'd never seen one in Japan. I'd seen, you know, the calculators, but no computers. And so my journey into the digital world really started at that point. I got myself a PC and started learning how to program with it. And 6 months after doing that, I gave a resume at a job fair, a Microsoft job fair, and got hired as a engineer in the Microsoft Excel software development team. And I was there for about 4 years. But when I was first hired, I thought, wow, I must be a genius. They hired me because I'm a brilliant software designer or software engineer. And within the first couple of days, I realized, nope, that's not why they hired me. They hired me because I could speak Japanese and English. And so then sitting next to these brilliant guys from MIT and Berkeley and Stanford, I was mentored by them and was able to pick up a few things over the 4 years. And then retired from Microsoft and started up my own software development company. And the first company I started up was called Sisco Soft, which is Cisco with the word soft at the end of it. And the reason I was able to kind of do that was because during my time at Microsoft, I was taking copious notes of everything that I was doing at Microsoft, all the little features that I had added or all the different bugs we solved and stuff like this. So when it came to performance review time, I had pages and pages and pages of stuff that I had done. And my manager had never seen anyone like that before. And so I got the highest score you can possibly get in that first review, the next review, and so on. And so I just, even though my salary at the time was something like $45,000 a year, I was making, 300 to 500,000 a year in stock. And so then I retired essentially after 4 years from Microsoft and started up my own business. That's kind of the bare bones beginning in a nutshell. So a homeschooler can do it.
So you left. So what kind of software were you building? What kind of software development company was it?
So the first software product that I developed was for golf, and it was called GolfWits. We actually had a contract to do a job with the United States Golf Association to do their course ratings for every course in the United States. So every course that you play has a course slope rating system score, and that was being calculated by my company. I'd done 14,000 golf courses in the United States, the little tiny two-dimensional maps, hole by hole. So when they showed on USA Today or Reuters or CBS Sports, those were my maps. You'd see where Tiger Woods was hitting his shots. They were actually being drawn on my maps. Both not only just where the ball landed, but the shape of the shot or the flight path of the ball. So we were doing all of that. And then but I made one fatal error in that company, and that was I focused all my energies on building for the Palm Pilot Aero, the Compact Aero, all those devices, believing that the future was handheld devices. But within 3 years of starting, that was in year 2000, but by 2003, I could see that the market was falling out from underneath us, and all of a sudden, overnight, there wasn't a single device anywhere on the planet that was actually virtually being used. And so I poured all of my energy.
Too early.
Yeah, it was a little too early. Yeah. And then I refocused and started getting into kind of the performance related software. I made a package called Schedule Pulse. Not Schedule Plus, not to be confused with Schedule Plus for Microsoft, but Schedule Pulse. And the idea with that tool was to allow you to take copious notes throughout the day, but then have that create a performance review for you. So that 6 months down the road, you would have this performance review written out, and you send it to your manager. They could actually review it even before you had sat down for your performance review. So that,
Was that drawing on your previous experience at Microsoft?
yeah, yeah. And just knowing that that was super important, and that numerous people had been, asking me about how I did it. How did I go from just normal old Joe, to somebody that got to work at Microsoft, and how you could create your own company, and how you can get big contracts with USA Today and United States Golf Association and many others. So it's kind of playing out that story through um, a recording of my own daily schedule in
I love it. I
pieces.
love it. That's a super interesting entree to note taking because uh, this is something I've thought about a lot. Performance reviews are this incredible moment. Like it's like a 1 hour meeting you have once or twice a year usually that determines the entire course of your job and your career. Like it's like you're negotiating essentially once or twice a year with your only client, with the client that takes up 100% of your capacity. And when I talk to people, I notice very few people prepare. They just kind of walk in there just to kind of talk. And I'm just like, what is the impact on your job scope and responsibilities, on your income, on your decision making, and all these things? If you just had, like you said, this trove of notes to draw on and make your case and influence, rather than just kind of accepting what gets offered to you. I think it makes sense that you would go for that very high leverage moment in your note taking.
Mhm. Yeah, because the through line is incredibly important. There's so many times where my manager would say, "Okay, we're compensating you for this and what you did here," and I said, "But wait a second, that's not the best part of the whole through line. If you take a look back 2 months earlier when we did this presentation to the whole company at Microsoft, or when we created the videos for them for the whatever project we were working on, or the presentations that we made to Bill Gates himself. And it's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that. You talked with Bill and you did that. And oh, okay, yeah, let me go back. And, it was always being able to readjust. And then the interesting thing is that the manager could actually take that content to his boss and do any readjustments if necessary. And so that's kind of how the through line is really a powerful feature.
Joe Shirley has a question here, which is, was your motivation to take notes in the beginning, was it just to serve your own learning, or was it specifically to set up good performance reviews?
It was mostly for my own learning, because I right away I could see, going to Microsoft and working for such a big company that's worldwide known, you get a big head, a big ego. But right away I was put in my spot, and I knew that I needed to be able to intake a ton of information, but the capacity of my ability to actually retain it is very low. So I really have to rely on note taking, and then the going back through the notes to actually remember things. Even in my Japanese language learning, it was the same thing. Just even though I was speaking normal everyday Japanese, just to get the fluency in terms of idioms and things like that, I had to kind of refer back to even as a kid growing up. So the flashcards, and all that kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff is super helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So then how do you go from I assume exiting the Palm market into what came next?
So that schedule pulse project came next, and then I then we ended up hitting another crisis in the United States, which was the 2008 in 911. And so at that point, many of the clients that I had were saying, okay, we're just taking a little bit of a breather, we're backing off. But I was right at that critical point where I just wasn't making it. I was barely breaking even, if that. And so I really had to go out and look for another job. So I took my family back to Japan. We did some work over there for about 5 months. And then we homeschooled our kids so we could, travel all over the place. I have 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl.
Wow.
So we hauled them out there and I did my job out there and came back. But then when I came back, I just felt like, I'm really interested in working with a Japanese and American company. So I started looking around for that, and within a week I found a job at Epson, and they needed somebody to set up a kind of interface with Microsoft in kind of the software end of things. Epson is a hardware company. And so I was really their only software engineer on the US side that was doing any ideation or innovation. And so I got designed an idea called mark sheets. The concept was to take, you're familiar with the Scantron machine?
Yeah.
Where you fill in the little bubbles and stuff like this. So I thought, well, what if you could take a normal $69 Epson printer that has an ADF on it and turn that into a Scantron machine where you actually in Microsoft Word create all the bubbles or whatever, and then you could scan it and it would score that. So I wrote the software that demonstrated it, but I went one level beyond that. I actually wrote the word processing software, if you will. To
Interesting.
actually be way more creative and create all kinds of markable elements on a page. And then that way you could have students not lose their place. You'd have the question, and then you'd have the bubbles right there, and you could mark the bubble, and then they could turn that, put that through the ADF, and it would grade them automatically.
Very cool.
So the teacher would create their own key, and then they would run that first, then all the other papers could go through. And I made it so that it could be totally randomized.
I love it.
That every single test in the classroom would be completely different, even though location of the questions would be different and the answer.
Beautiful. That's so cool. I have too much familiarity with Scantron, so I applaud your work to catch us all little cheaters that we were in school. So how did you, it sounds like you have quite a colorful, varied background in different kinds of like information relevant fields. How did that then, what was the jump from that to a dedicated knowledge management program?
Initially, my mom and dad being missionaries in Japan, they asked me to come and preach a couple of times out there, and they wanted me to write a book about some of the kanji characters and that they illustrate the gospel message in them. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll sit down and start writing that out, and it started to become a book in Microsoft Word. I was using Word and Google Docs, and then but it didn't take hardly any time at all. Within a week, I had so much information in there, and I couldn't organize it. I couldn't get my head around it, and then I was really bogged down by it. So I just thought, and it happened to be right at Thanksgiving, and we had the whole family over, from the eldest person to the youngest cousin. They were all in our living room, and what were they doing?
Yeah.
Not one of them was saying, gee, I have writer's block. And yet I was saying that the entire time trying to write my book. And they were right. So then I did a little bit of research into it, and I found that, the whole texting environment, that whole world has really leveled the playing field between boys and girls. Back in my day, boys would be lucky to have written 100,000 words in a lifetime,
Yeah.
the girls would do that in a year, right? You would leverage your girlfriend in school. You know, I mean, I didn't, but many people would, right? To help them with their papers and stuff like this. Actually, I did have my wife help me on a couple papers, just writing things fluidly in English when I came back from Japan when I was in college. But the that the concept of getting past the blank page or a page that is totally filled up, those are the two issues that I was running into.
Yeah.
Blank page, filled up page. But I was seeing that if you could chunk it out in little bits and pieces into building blocks, you could potentially then take those building blocks and reorganize them. And then what if you could actually take that thread, because there was many multiple threads of conversations that I had with people, you know, texting. I was thinking, what if you could put those side by side and then see a whole entire document and look at a thread as a chapter or a chapter's notes,
Yeah.
and then bring them all up and organize them. And that kind of became the concept of it. And early on, I was just thinking, you know, I want to do something that is totally different from what the rest of the world is doing in terms of a real writing application. Most people are writing in place. And what I mean by that is that you start from the top and you work your way down. Or you would, you know, if you've written a whole bunch of things, you would target that one item and then you'd add some more things in there. But the way I envisioned it, because my mind would say, here's a great idea, start here. I wanted to just be able to get it down. And what I was finding is that the text box, that tiny little text box on social media, is not intimidating to anyone. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone is totally familiar with it. Everyone's perfectly fine with it. But as soon as you got more space, and all of a sudden it's like, well, how do I write this? How do I fill in the space? It's not wrapping fast enough, you know, and so you're kind of battling that psychology.
So true. So true. Yeah. The same person who says, I have no time to write, or I have no time to create content, let's say, spends 100 hours a year on Instagram. The
Yeah.
same person who says, I have nothing to say, the average Facebook user posts, well, this was a few years ago, I don't think it's true anymore, but the average Facebook user a few years ago posts 50 times a month. It's
Yeah.
like, on one hand, we say that we don't have the time or space or ideas, and on the other hand, the average modern online human is prolific in their creation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, now texting itself is not to be confused with writing. You know, they are two very different animals, but if you can use the mechanism and then get people comfortable with using that tool for their longer writing, you know,
Yes.
writing drafts and stuff like this, I was thinking maybe we might have something there. So I initially built Speare for myself to be able to complete this book and get it out. And it's, you know, you can find it out on Amazon, but it's not, it's my first effort, but I did get it done.
Yeah, that's what matters. It counts. It counts. It's
Yeah,
done.
it's done,
Can
yeah.
you share
So
it to us, Ken? Could you share your screen?
sure. Um, let's see here. Um, okay, can you see my screen there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So um, Speare has two panes basically. On the far left-hand side, you've got a boards panel, and this is where all of your boards that you ever create just kind of go there in most recently created. They're not organizable on that panel. But you'll notice that I have up here, I've got some pin boards. I've got a main folder board, and I've got Becoming a Thought Leader and Harnessing the Power of Writing board up here. These are just some of the boards. If I open up, for example, let's see here. Actually, let me go to a different space. Harnessing the Power of Writing. This is a book that I'm writing. And so you can see each one of these panels or boards represents a chapter of the book that I'm writing.
So do I understand? Let me see if I understand that each one of these columns you're showing us is a board,
Yeah.
and then multiple boards live within a space. Is that right?
Yes, multiple boards live in a space. Yeah. Mhm.
So this space you're showing us is dedicated to your book. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah. So
how are you using this to write your book? Is it like one board per chapter?
yeah, in this case, I'm using one board per chapter, and I simplified this thing here. If you look at, let me go ahead and create a new space here and open up the this thing here. This is a board that I've created building blocks on it as an outline or the structure for what I wanted to write about. Inside of it, I turned it into a task list so that I could see that I've actually accomplished or finished, completed those items. So when you click on a particular item, like the thought leader, if I click on this board link, it'll open up that chapter and I can actually see what I've written, but I can see that I accomplished the story of a thought leader. I finished the 3 principles: vision, voice, and visibility, what thought leadership is. And then underneath this, you can see, oops, you can see all the different pieces that are completed for
So
this chapter.
you're kind of combining some aspects of a to-do list with some aspects of a document library.
Right, yeah. So the way this works is I can go ahead and compile my one chapter by clicking this compile button up in the top right-hand corner of the board, the thought leader. When I click on that, um, it compiles the board into a document. And now I can look at it in just normal kind of document mode.
Oh, interesting. Are changes you make here propagated back to the boards?
No, we don't allow you to actually make changes at this level. You have to go back
Ah,
and change
interesting.
them here. So if I wanted to, for example, add an image of writing for the thought leader, I would go up here and search for images. Actually, that's a great image right there. I had my team actually draw building a second brain images here.
Nice. I love those.
Yeah. So let's say that I take this one and then I can drag it over here and I can plop it up here. So now
Nice.
that becomes the image for that chapter. And so then when I recompile this time, I can see that that image is associated with that document then.
Very cool. Joe, or no, Avi asked on some of the boards it says 9 of 9 completed or 5 of 5 complete. What does that refer to?
So that refers to the task items that need to be done. So for example, in this 5 of 5 complete, if down in here I have not completed the vision one, it trickles up and says all the way up here 4 of 5 are complete. And then I see that this one's not completed yet because this isn't completed. But as soon as I complete the vision statement, then it trickles all the way up and is completed. So you can get a quick visual as to how many to-do lists are in each chapter of the book.
Okay. What
And
would you
then,
say? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so then the other critical part of this, let me just go ahead and close other boards here, go back. I'm gonna go ahead and open up several of these boards here. We'll go ahead and open this one here, and here. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this one down. This is a portion of a book, let's say, that I want to share out. Maybe this is what I've completed and I want to share this with my book launch team or something. I could then compile the entire space. So I can go ahead and click that button and now compiling 4 boards into the one document. And then as you scroll through this thing, you can see that you come down to the next chapter, etc.
Very cool. Very cool. What would you say are the 2 or 3 most, I'd say, innovative features or design, aspects of the design in Speare?
Yeah, so the most I think unique part of it is that we're almost marrying the texting world with the capability of a word processor, but then adding the flexibility of what I call a thought processor. And that if I add in a new board here, everything that I start writing, I have to start down at the bottom just as though I was texting. So this is my first note. I go ahead and hit that there. It automatically titles the board. I can go back here and rephrase this as notes.
Interesting. You're texting yourself the book.
Yeah, you're texting yourself the book. Yeah, everything is everything you write is encapsulated. You know, something like this, right? I can come in here and combine these two. I'll go ahead and add the periods on here. By opening up one of the building blocks and dragging and dropping the other building block in it. And now that's a paragraph.
Interesting.
Or I can just go ahead and just type right in here.
You know what's so funny about this is, you know, we have in our online learning platform, we have a course called Rite of Passage, which is a writing course. And we teach, David, my business partner, teaches people to write like they talk, to write like they text, to just
Right.
be that direct, succinct, and casual. Because what people tend to do, I think from what school taught us is, you know, suddenly when they start writing, adopt this really pretentious academic tone that we've been taught is more impressive or something. And
Yeah.
this very much is in line with that idea of just using casual everyday language.
Right. Yeah. And when you use casual language, which is what I do quite often, I have a routine here. We live on a farm, and we have a horse and a dog, and we have to feed them and take care of them. So it's a perfect time for me to go out and then use speech to text on the phone. And I can text my messages directly to Speare using speech to text.
Oh, interesting. It's
And so then as I'm thinking that way, my brain is kind of randomly grabbing all kinds of things, and I'm just throwing down the things that are coming right off my tongue. But when I get back, then I can come in and say, well, actually, I can type right here really needs to be the topic sentence of this paragraph, and I can just drag it up there, you know, and reorganize it that way. Or if it needs to be, these two need to be a separate paragraph altogether, I can just break them out, and then I can reorder the two paragraphs like that.
It's amazing. I love it. Does this Ken asks if this works on iPad? What are the devices that are supported?
It's we chose early on to make this a web app. I've made desktop apps like the Marksheet product is a full-on desktop application, but and Microsoft Excel, of course, is made for a bunch of different devices. But we made it first for web app just to understand the concept of Speare as broadly as we could. So the web app actually functions fairly decently on every platform in every browser. There are going to be some nuances that we haven't hit just yet, but we'd love to hear that from people and then fix those bugs. But for the most part, Safari and Google on the Android, iOS, Mac, and PC, those work fairly solid. On the iPad and the tablets, there's a little bit of funkiness going on there because Speare tries to figure out whether it's in landscape mode or in portrait mode.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some things that we're still working on there, but our goal is to make Speare available as native mobile and desktop apps for all the popular devices out there.
Okay. We have a few kind of practical questions here. Julie asked, So how does it work exactly? Do you text like a designated number or something? How does the text find its way into the web app?
Okay, so there's two ways to do that. Sometimes I'll go ahead and log into my account on my phone and record my notes. So let me just go ahead and do that here really quickly. Let's see here, log in to Speare account. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new board here.
I think your screen is frozen.
Oh, my screen is frozen?
Yeah, try stopping sharing and then starting again.
Okay,
Oh,
and then share again.
yeah.
Okay, there we go. How is that?
Try moving your mouse a bit. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so um, uh, I've made a board here, and I'm just going to go ahead and text myself some notes. So I'm doing an interview here with Tiago Forte right now. He's the author of Building a Second Brain. I've watched his TED Talk. It's fabulous. Everyone should watch that, period. We're talking about Speare and the potential of Speare being a tool that could be used for building a second brain, period. Okay, so now when I come over here, I can refresh my Speare account here. And you can see that I've got this texting thing here. And here's the notes.
Cool. So it has its own designated board for texts.
Right, yeah, so that actually was a board that I was using within Speare itself. So I logged into Speare there. In order to text to Speare using text messaging, you have a special telephone number that you call into Speare, and you put in your own account your telephone number. So it makes a match between the two and says, oh, okay, I know where I need to put these notes, and starts putting those notes in there. And those notes would be found underneath SMS notes here.
Very cool. Wow. That's a feature I haven't seen before. So you literally call a number and you just talk and then you hang up. That's it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool. It's like
Well, you would go ahead and say, it's not that you're calling a phone, but you just use your text message, normal text messaging. You add Speare as a contact.
okay.
You would say, Google, text Speare or whatever, and then you could just start talking,
Okay.
and it would send text messages to Speare to your
Okay.
account.
Makes sense. Joe said that he's signed up and he's in Spear right now, but he can't see how to set up a project or to-dos. How can you demonstrate how you would just start a project in Spear?
Yeah, was it Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for signing up for Speare. That's awesome. Love it. Yeah, so the question is, how do you create a project and how do you create a task?
Yeah, like from scratch. First time you open the app, how would you get started?
Okay, so you can open up a bunch of different, actually, let me go ahead and create a new space just so it's nice and clean. And then you would go ahead and add a board. You might title the board, this one, Chapter 1. And then you go ahead and create a second board, Chapter 2, etc. But what I would do, once you get going and you've added a lot of different notes, let me go ahead and grab, is there something I can grab here? Let's go to search writing. So I'm just searching the database here all blocks. I'm just going to go for blocks. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this one here and copy it and put it in here. So I've got some text in there. So you see that chapter 1 is blank and chapter 2 has got some text in there. I'm going to go ahead and close the search. Now I'll go ahead and open up a new board and call this my book project. Then I come from over here and I can add in chapter 2, chapter 1, etc. And I can organize these in the order that I want them to be. So then when I go to right click and close boards to the right, I can open these, I can go ahead and pin this book project to the top. So now it's always going to be here. And I can close this down. In order to get to chapter 1 and 2, I may have lost those way down below. And I can find them by doing a search, of course, but I can just go to the book project and then open up chapter 2 and chapter 1. And I've got those 2 chapters there again. So that's how you would create a project in Speare. You utilize the simple Lego building blocks, if you will, to snap together to create project boards, chapters, notes, etc. And you can attach, for example, if I've got some notes that I'm writing on chapter 2, I might say chapter 2 notes. And in here, some thoughts about chapter 2. This board I may want to have associated with this, but I don't want it to actually necessarily print out, but I'm going to show you how this works. You drag chapter 2 notes onto my book project like this. I can go ahead and nest this in here and collapse it, right? So those are, that board is just notes referring to chapter 2, but I don't want it to print out. So if I go ahead and publish this book project right now by clicking on it shows you the 4 boards that are being compiled, and you can see that some thoughts about chapter 2 is there, but I don't want it to be there. So in order to get rid of that, I come in here and I put in 2 forward slashes at the beginning of it to comment it out. So now I can write as many notes in there as I want, but it's only going to compile just the boards that are not commented out. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let me see if I got this straight. What do you call on the screen right there where it says some thoughts about chapter 2? What would you call that little item? Like it just
that item is a building block.
Okay, but boards can also be building blocks?
Yeah, so yeah, boards can be building blocks and spaces can be building blocks. Yeah, so it just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's kind of like in Legos where you have that grass field, the big square block.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the little things that you can put on them. All of them are building blocks, but the atomic level of the Lego is really that small block.
Okay. So just to kind of understand this better, it looks like in this case you have book project as a single board, but
Yep.
earlier we saw that your book was a whole area. At what point do you expand it from a single board into a bigger area?
Yeah, so that's what we've done here essentially. We've actually taken this and we've moved these boards around like this. And so now you've got this bigger area here that you're working in because those boards are open in the space.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
And the
then,
space?
yeah. So I've opened up all those boards into the space and now I can work with those as I need to. And so in the space itself, what the beauty of having the board, compiling the board, is that the board always keeps its order of all the chapters. But in space, I'm writing something that references something later in the book. You know, chapter 2 will reference something like later in chapter 11. Well, maybe I want to put those 2 chapters together so I can see them side by side as I'm writing.
Makes sense. So you're doing what I notice a lot of well, knowledge management apps kind of have to do this at some point, is separating content from format,
Mhm.
right? Like not having, basically having the structure of how something is presented be different from what it's actually presenting. So the two
Right,
can change independently.
right. Yeah, and so you can also take a board and have the board represented multiple times. So for example, chapter 2, I can have chapter 2 in here again, or I can have chapter 2 on a totally different board or in a totally different workspace. And so when I make changes in chapter 2, no matter which version of it I type into, it's actually syncing up all the boards.
Cool. So you can have duplication, but one source of truth.
One source of it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Someone asked, a couple of people actually, does that SMS feature you were demonstrating work internationally or just in the US?
Right now it's just US. We hope to be able to do it internationally, but we have to get a little bit larger in order to support it because it's quite expensive. We've focused entirely on North America right now. We haven't really jumped into Japan or China or Europe, just because it's just easier for us in the beginning to just have a large market, but focused. So
Makes sense.
yeah,
But the Speare itself is generally available anywhere.
yeah, it's generally available. Yeah, everywhere in the world. It's just that yeah, the SMS notes you'd have to pay the fee, and that can be pretty expensive.
Um, Export options. How and when and in what format do you export from Speare?
Yeah, so regularly in Speare, everything you write in Speare is recorded automatically or saved automatically. So everything you're typing, it's changing and saving immediately. But we have another level where I'm just going to go ahead and type in here really quickly, chapter 1. And then I'm going to give it some markdown so it stands out. Um, and then I'm going to go ahead and compile this project here. I'll close this board down so you can kind of see. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of just have only the workspace there. Okay, so now you can just see just the 3 boards here. And then I'm going to go ahead and compile these 3 boards together. When I compile it, this is where you can take it into export. So we can create a draft of this by, clicking the create draft, and I'll call this thinking aloud or something. So that's a draft that I've created. I can click on it, and now this is published to my private library under this link. I can then go ahead and copy paste every one of these things out to a third party, which is what we're doing right now. We don't have an export feature just yet, although that's definitely in our backlog features list. So there is a little bit of work to get your content from Speare out to some other project, but you can, because you compile these drafts, you can then go ahead and combine all of them together into one larger monolithic document and get all of your content out of Speare in one fell copy paste if you wanted to.
So export just basically for now looks like compile whatever you want to bring somewhere else, copy
Yeah,
paste the compiled document, and then paste it wherever it's going to go.
right, yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Did I just see that you could share this page? Is that right?
yeah, so you can then go ahead and create a post as well. Then you'd come up here and create a post. So this would be, let's say, my book. And the path will be, actually, this will be the thinking aloud. And then this is my book. And then we post this. And then when you go to that link, this is actually shared out to the world. So if you
Very
went to
cool.
speare.com at Speare Book, which is my channel, then you would see all the stuff written out there.
How does that work? Because that URL, someone else could have Spear Book as a, how is that URL not something that could lead somewhere else?
Yeah, so the speare.com / at Speare Book. This is it's a one time use only. So no one else can actually use that URL
Interesting.
because
What
that's,
is the,
oh, go ahead.
Alon asks what the pricing model looks like.
So it's $60 a year or $4.95 per month. Um, you can try out Speare for 14 days for free, but we also offer a 1 month usage for all the Speare Pro features, and that's $15 a month. What happens is when you use the Speare Pro monthly, you buy 1 month, you go ahead and write up your project and do all the stuff that you want. Then the Speare Pro reverts to Speare Basic. So all the pro features go away, but all the basic features like the moving around of stuff and all that writing and everything, that's all still there. But you lose aspects like SMS texting. You lose many of the other Speare Pro features. Those go away, but you still have access to your book for free. You still have access to writing and everything. But as soon as you need to get back into the heavy lifting that you want Speare to do, then you can buy Speare Pro again for $15, 6 months later and finish your project or whatever. So that's the way that works.
Very cool. Very cool. I have a question for you about kind of a more philosophical question. I noticed that most knowledge management apps I come across, they tend to either be super functional and extremely ugly on one end, or they're beautiful but don't have much functionality. And I noticed this is, you've invested quite a lot in UX design. You've put quite a bit of thought into the aesthetics and the interactions and these little, like I noticed when you move a board, it's at an angle, so you can tell, that that's the active one, things like that. And I was pretty shocked when you said you had an engineering background, because I assumed it must have been a designer or product person that had developed this.
Yeah,
So how do you think about that, and what's the balance for you between those?
yeah, you nailed it on the head. I came up with the idea and wrote the back end for it, but my designer actually, we have a UX UI designer that does all that stuff for us. And 4.0, if you like 3.0 here, you're going to love 4.0.
Interesting. So my next question is what made you give up because it takes, you kind of have to give up some control. You have to invest time, have to invest money. You have to consult this person. Like, what was it about your past experience that made you listen to your designer, basically?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it's basically that, yeah, you're bringing up the idea of trust, right? How do you trust somebody? Well, when somebody is demonstrating a skill, it's really based off of merit. Can they actually get the job done? And it's both a skill set, but it's also being able to see them actually at work. And if they're allowing you to see them do the work and work on bits and pieces of the project. For example, in the building of a paragraph, I had a very goofy idea, and I won't show you how it used to work. But my designer came along and said, you know what you need to be able to do is just split the blocks so that you can actually see a paragraph like this and be able to drag and drop the items in and collapse those blocks later. So you still have that experience. So as we went along and the designer was building in these things to the UI that I had initially made, it was like, okay, now I can give over full trust to it. So it is a path that you take, but you've got to be able to be willing to work together. And there's numerous cases where I've not agreed and thought my way was better, and we tested it with the beta group, and my way was the worst way, and everyone loved the designer's way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, so true. When can we expect 4.0? Is that like a redesign of the product?
It's not as much of a redesign as it is a feature set, but there is redesign elements in it that make Speare a lot more intuitive. We've been fairly good at conversing with our users and understanding, allowing them to tell us their story, how they're doing their writing projects or their knowledge management or their scripting, or however they're using the product. And then we listen to that, we engage with them on feature ideas, and then we make a couple stabs at it. And so that's kind of the process that we use to kind of roll this thing out.
Yeah, I love it. I really like what you're doing. I think what jumps out at me from this conversation is that you are focused on writing, which I think is a really good idea rather than just endless accumulation. I love that you have these atomized chunks, these blocks that can be easily moved around. I like the hierarchy, spaces, boards, boards within boards, building blocks. And I really like the balance between functionality and design. I think that's really underrated in the space. This tends to be an industry by and for engineers who are all just building things for each other, and they can't understand why normal humans have no idea what they're trying to do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it comes down a lot to these usability things. So I'm really happy that this exists, and I'm just yeah, I love the product. It's really cool.
That's awesome. Love hearing that. Yeah. And our team is really interested in the whole concept of the building a second brain. There's parts of it that allow us to think better of Speare's future because of the concept of being able to build a second brain. That's really a fascinating thing. We've called it a thought library. Everything that you put into Speare becomes building blocks in your thought library. But there's aspects of what you're doing that really help the organization and the development of the content that you put into your thought library, being able to pull it out, be able to backlink, do all kinds of really cool things. And so that's the future of Speare is really exciting.
Absolutely. Well, I want to wrap up here. In the last couple of minutes, there's a number of questions we didn't get to right here at the end. Is there a way that people can contact you or ask you those questions? And second, do you have a call to action? Like, what should people do if this is something that they want to give a try?
Yeah. So people can contact us at generally at speare.com through our support, or they can contact me directly at kent@speare.com, SPEARE.com. And I'll just mention here on the side that Speare is short for Shakespeare because it makes short work of thinking and writing. So that's how you can remember the product. And then for a call to action, there's nothing to lose. You can go ahead and jump right into Speare and try out the pro features. You'll be able to get out whatever writing that you wanted to in kind of the compilation model that I showed you. So if you invested a few hours in learning Speare and you wrote some really cool things and you wanted to get those out, you'll be able to get them out during that 14-day period and beyond. And then if you choose to buy Speare, we do offer a full, no questions asked, 100% money back guarantee for 30 days. So you can also try that as well.
Okay. Kent, I'm sorry. Thank you. Really appreciate it. This has been awesome, and we'll have this video up shortly on the blog. And thank you so much for joining us, and also to everyone who attended, the 30 or so of you. Couldn't have done it without you, and I appreciate just everyone showing up and having a very productive conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiago. This has been awesome.
Very cool. Okay, everyone. See you around. Bye-bye.
Bye.